Okay, so in any organization, you've really got two structures at play. First, there's the one everyone sees, the formal org chart, right? All the neat boxes and the clear lines of who reports to whom. But then there's the one you feel. It's that invisible current that explains why some people's wild ideas get funded while your perfectly data-backed proposal just dies on the vine. It's the hidden architecture that really decides who gets heard and whose career actually takes off. So today, we're not just going to look at this system. We're going to take it apart piece by piece. We're handing you the actual blueprint to the invisible architecture of power that's running just under the surface of everything you do.
All right, let's dive right in with a truth that, honestly, most people learn the hard way, and usually after a lot of frustration. That official hierarchy, the one that's all documented in the HR system, it's often just a formality. The real work, the shaping of opinions, the building of consensus, the actual decision-making, that all happens somewhere else entirely. It happens in the back channels, in the DMs, over coffee. Because, let's be real, trust isn't built in scheduled one-hour meetings. It's forged in all those little informal interactions. This is where the real alliances are made, and it's an incredibly powerful, invisible web that plays by a whole different set of rules.
So look, on the left, that's the map they hand you on day one, right? The formal org chart. It's nice and tidy, it's official, and it tells you your role. But on the right, that's the map that actually matters, the shadow chart. It's not a hierarchy, it's a sprawling, messy network. It's totally unofficial, and it's pretty much invisible to anyone who isn't looking for it. And here's the absolute key difference. The org chart defines your role, but the shadow chart, it determines your outcomes. Just let that sink in for a second. One tells you what your job title is, the other decides if you'll ever actually succeed at it. Most people spend their entire careers just trying to climb that official ladder, wondering why they're not getting anywhere, completely blind to the fact they're lost in a totally different landscape. And, this is what leads to one of the most crushing feelings you can have in your career. You're putting in the work, you're delivering great results, you know you're good at what you do. But for some reason, your projects stall out, your ideas hit this weird, silent wall of resistance, and it's so easy to start blaming yourself, right? Maybe I'm not smart enough, or I'm just not persuasive enough. But what if it's not about skill at all? What if you're not losing because you're incompetent? You're losing because you're unconnected. It's like you're playing a game of chess, but your opponent is secretly playing poker in the next room, and that's the game that actually decides the winner. Today, we're going to show you that hidden game. We're giving you the blueprint to see the whole structure for the first time.
All right, let's get into our first section here. We're going to talk about a feeling that, well, I'm willing to bet you know it all too well. It's that sinking feeling in your stomach, that weird, unsettling moment when you realize you've just walked onto a stage, totally prepared for your big performance, only to find out the play was already cast, rehearsed, and finished, and you weren't even invited. Just picture it. You've been prepping for weeks, your data is solid, your logic is perfect. You walk into that meeting ready for a real debate, but as you're presenting, you start to notice it. These little knowing glances between a few people, the strange lack of any real questions, just this polite but weirdly unified resistance. And then, bam, a sudden consensus just materializes out of nowhere, a solid wall against your idea. There's no argument, no discussion, just polite disagreement. And you're left standing there feeling totally alone and confused. What just happened wasn't a debate. It was a formality. It was a ceremony to rubber stamp a decision that was already made. And it's the classic, painful sign that an invisible network is at work. So that experience, it actually has a name. It's called being preemptively out-architected. You see, you weren't out-argued. The merits of your idea were never even really on trial. You were beaten by a structure. You were outmaneuvered by a series of quiet chats and back-channel agreements that took place long before you ever set foot in that room. The meeting itself wasn't for making a decision, it was just political theater to make a private decision look public.
Now, when this happens over and over, the long-term damage is a condition we call status atrophy. It's like a slow professional decay. It starts with resource isolation. Suddenly, you're not on the key emails anymore, you're left off important meeting invites. Then, your brain gets starved of crucial metadata. You might see the official company announcement, but you miss the subtext, the hallway chatter, the real vibe of what's going on. After a while, the network starts treating you like a ghost node. You're there, but you're invisible. No one asks for your opinion, and at that point, you're not in charge of your career anymore. You're just being passively managed by an invisible network filter.
Okay, so how does this happen? How is this consensus just manufactured out of thin air? It's not magic. It's a system. It's an architecture with predictable parts. So let's get into it. Let's dissect the core engine of this whole thing, what we call the Node-Centrality Loop, and the person who sits right in the middle of it all, the hub. This loop is a really sophisticated 4-stage playbook for consolidating power. Let's break it down. First up, you have the bridge capture. The hub is smart. They find the gaps, the structural holes between important groups, like, say, engineering and sales. By becoming the only reliable bridge between them, they turn into an information toll booth. Everything important has to pass through them. Second is the pre-consensus ping. Way before the big meeting, the hub is quietly pinging the key players, feeling out their opinions, planting little seeds of doubt or agreement. They're basically preloading the decision. Third, and this is where the trap closes, is the reputation anchor. If you dare to challenge the hub, they almost never fight you directly. That's messy. Instead, they just signal to the network that you're difficult or not a team player. And then the network does the dirty work of isolating you for them. And finally, the masterstroke, the CEO whisper. Because they've become the central source of information, the hub becomes a trusted storyteller for the actual leadership. They don't just give facts, they create the vibe. They define the reality that the big bosses then make decisions. And this right here, this is the whole game. The hub's power doesn't come from their job title or their budget. It comes from controlling the traffic of information. This is the ultimate leverage point. By sitting at that crossroads, they don't just pass along information, they frame it. They add spin, they filter it. And when you do that, you're not just controlling information, you're controlling the entire organization's perception of reality.
This is a brutal way to put it, but it's incredibly accurate. This is what happens when the system turns on you. When you challenge a hub, they don't have a big open fight. They just signal to the network that you're a foreign object, an irritant. And just like an immune system, the network activates to push you out. It's a social excretion. You're not fired, you're just removed. It's so quiet. The meeting invites stop coming. Your projects get deprioritized. It's a slow, methodical erasure until you feel like you're just shouting into an empty room. So why is this system so damn effective? Well, it's because it's not just about org charts and networks. It's about psychology. The system works because it hacks the little mental shortcuts that are hardwired into our brains. If the network is the hardware, what we're about to talk about is the software it runs on. To really get it, we have to look at the engine that powers it all, our built-in status radar. At the absolute core of the hub's power is this really simple but potent psychological trick, the Propinquity Effect. Propinquity is a fancy word, but the idea is dead simple. It just means nearness. We are biologically wired to trust people we see and interact with all the time. Their constant presence tricks our brain into just automatically giving them credibility. It's why you'd ask the neighbor you see every day for a cup of sugar, not the one you've never spoken to. Proximity creates an illusion of trust, and the hub is an absolute master of proximity. And the hub then stacks other biases on top of that. First, they weaponize social proof. If the hub and maybe 2 or 3 of their allies all say the same thing, your brain's shortcut is to just assume it must be true. It feels like a real consensus, not a fake one. Next, they take advantage of cognitive fluency. See, our brains like simple stories. It is so much easier to believe the simple story that, oh, Dave just knows everyone and is super helpful, than to accept the more complicated and kind of threatening reality that Dave is a strategic gatekeeper who is controlling information to maintain power. And finally, we all fall for the heuristic of connectivity. We see someone who's connected to everyone, and we automatically assume that the quantity of their connections equals the quality of their information. We just think they must be right, because, hey, they know everybody. This all leads us to a really critical, foundational mind shift that you have to make if you want to see this game clearly. In the normal hierarchical world, we're all taught that information is supposed to be about objective truth. But in the informal network, that assumption is a huge mistake. You have to get this. In a network, information isn't truth. Information is status. It's currency. Sharing a piece of gossip or some inside info isn't really about telling you a fact. It's a transaction. It's a move on a social chessboard. It signals who's in the in-group. It tests your loyalty. It creates social favors. The actual content is almost secondary to what the act of sharing it means. Once you start seeing communication as a series of status transactions, the whole board looks different. Okay. We've taken the machine apart, we've seen the architecture, we've looked at the psychology that makes it run. Now for the most important part, what do you do about it? And look, this isn't about teaching you to be a manipulator. This is about defense. This is about moving from being a pawn of the network to becoming an analyst who can actually read it. It's time to talk about how you reclaim your cognitive sovereignty. You're basically at a crossroads, and you really have 2 paths you can take. On one path,
You can stay a blind node. You can keep your head down, trust the official org chart, work by yourself, and just get knocked around by political currents you can't even see, and you'll probably end up with that status atrophy we talked about. Or you can choose the other path. You can become a network analyst. You learn to map the invisible web. You strategically build connections outside your immediate team. You figure out how to bypass the gatekeepers. And by doing that, you restore your own cognitive sovereignty.
So, how do you become a network analyst? You learn a skill called shadow mapping. It's a 4-step process. First, you identify the informal hubs. Literally, get a piece of paper and draw a new org chart. Not based on job titles, but on who has coffee with whom, who's always talking to whom. The real power centers will pop out pretty quickly. Second, map and build your weak ties. Your best friends are probably on your team, but your most valuable information comes from your weaker connections in other departments. Think of them as your early warning system. Third, learn to bypass the gatekeeper. If you think a hub is filtering your info, don't confront them. It's a losing battle. Instead, find someone on the edge of their network and build your own direct connection. You have to break their monopoly on information. And finally, and this is so important, always verify with redundancy. Never ever rely on one person, especially a hub, to get the pulse. You have to cross-reference what you hear with different unconnected sources. When the stories don't match up, you've just found network manipulation.
And really, if you remember one thing from all of this, let it be this. People waste so much energy trying to climb a formal ladder that often doesn't even lead to real power. The best use of your energy isn't fighting the hierarchy you can see, but mapping the web you can't. That is where the real game is played.
You see, the real secret to this whole system, the thing it absolutely depends on, is that it stays invisible. It works in the shadows, messing with your perceptions without you even realizing it. But the second you can see it, the moment you can name the hub and spot the pre-consensus ping for what it is, its power over you just shatters. Seeing the network is a superpower. Real immunity doesn't come from trying to fight the system. It comes from understanding it. Your awareness is its kryptonite.
Look, the point of all this wasn't to turn you into some kind of master manipulator. It was to give you a new lens, a new map for the world you're operating in. The invisible has now been made visible. The architecture is laid bare. The map is in your hands now. So the only question left is, what are you going to do with it?